Good afternoon to all our participants today in today's knowledge event, Preventing Contamination and Upholding Safety, the Critical Need for Due Diligence in Food Production. In a recent interaction, the chairman of the All India Food Processors Association, Dr. Prabodh Halde, said that India's household consumption is expected to keep increasing to 2030, making it the world's fifth largest consumer of food and food technology. Most of you know that India is already the second largest producer of fruit, vegetables in the world. This whole growth, I presume, includes food processing, the supply chain, and possibly food packaging. We at Ippstar estimate that the country's food processing sector currently contributes about 7.5% of the GDP, with a value of 22 lakh crore, which is about US $280 billion. It is said that the food processing sector attracted $4.18 billion worth of investment from 2014 to 2020, which is in fact a much lower number than was expected earlier by organizations such as McKinsey. So this is expected to keep going up. The food processing sector is growing in double digits. One would say nominally in the low double digits, 11-12% at least, since we are conservative in our thinking. And it should double in size easily by 2030, if not a little earlier. And it should reach about $550 billion, or about 45 to 50 lakh crore in that time. And this will also contribute to considerable number of job creation in forthcoming years. Some estimates say that job creation will be at the rate of something like 80 to 90 lakhs a year, which is about, it's considerable. There are more than 40,000 registered food processing units in India. Many of these bigger companies, such as Nestle, Mondelez, ITC, and Balaji, are adding new capacities in plants. New and registered plants will continue to grow and transform themselves, with technologies adding more value and capacity, and they will become connected to modern supply chains. This presents several challenges. Among these, for today's food manufacturers, the most important is to provide safe products to the end consumer and to take the necessary steps to minimize the risk of hazards leading to product recalls. In the event of a recall, legal investigation, or an audit from food safety authorities, manufacturers must be able to provide the necessary documentary evidence to prove that they have been diligent in mitigating the risks of contamination and or other mishaps like mislabeling, and that they have, fully complied with the regulations in the food production process. This means technology for inspection and due diligence that can prove that these automated inspection systems are fail-safe is also necessary. Today's webinar covers the concept of due diligence within product inspection processes. We will delve into the legal requirements and standards while also addressing the critical issue of product recalls. Now, let me also say that during the course of our event, we will conduct a few polls, basically after each of the presentations, to gather your insights. And we encourage you to submit your questions side by side as the presenters are speaking, using the QA box, the question and answer box that can appear, which appears on your screen, in fact. And we will try to also address as many questions as possible during the live sessions as time permits. Any questions we are unable to answer live, we will receive, these questions will receive expert answers afterwards, following from the respective experts. Please note that the session will be recorded, and I believe if you wish to receive the recording, you can let us know, and the organizers will send that to you. Additionally, we request your valuable insights through the feedback form that will become available to you when you exit the session at the end. We will start with the presentation. There are three presentations. We will start with the presentation by Sidharth who is the head of sales at MettlerToledo Product Inspection in India. Sidharth has more than 24 years of experience in assisting manufacturers in enhancing their operational efficiency and productivity through cutting edge product inspection technology. He has been involved in various compliance, regulatory, and productivity improvement projects, both global and in the Indian food and pharmaceutical industries. His expertise extends to understanding consumer processes, packaging requirements, and the role of automation in meeting these needs, especially in Indian conditions. Sidharth, the floor is yours. However, just to start off, let me ask you, what are the challenges that Indian food manufacturers have faced in the past? And what are the present challenges?
Good afternoon, all, and thank you, Mr. Khanna, for a brief introduction. To start, I would like to reply to the questions what you have asked. If I see a 20-year horizon, 15 years back, most of the manufacturers or the equipment manufacturers or the food manufacturers, the concerns were about equipment capability, which meant the detection capability of the equipments or the measuring capability of the equipments. Last, I would say 3 to 4 years, the concerns have changed. As a food manufacturers, the concerns are brand recalls, product safety, and also about uh, overfill and false rejections. From equipment side and technology partners, what we are focusing is on due diligence and digitizations. So thank you for setting the floor. And I would now start with the presentation, and I would take you through the what is due diligence, what is due diligence defense, and also what are the global compliances and standards prevailing, which as a manufacturer you should be following, and what are the food safety precautions and what all equipments can help you to meet them. So let's start with what is food safety precautions? Why is it important? Every manufacturer today, as a manufacturer today, you want to ensure that your product that goes out in the market is of highest quality. It is free from contamination, any foreign body contamination, which could be a metal, which could be a glass, depending upon the packaging, depending upon the processes. The product is accurately labeled. The product is correctly weighed, which means whatever is printed and it is as per that. The information available on the product is as what has been advertised, and most important, it is unlikely to harm the end customer, or I would say the end consumer. So how do we meet this? So there are various ways. I would say most important is the compliance and the standards and the guidelines. This basically helps us to reduce the product recalls. This helps us to meet the safety requirements of the end product, which in turn, I would say this helps us to deliver the safe food to the consumer. So how does it work? The most important is the hazard analysis critical control point principles. Most of food manufacturers do work on this, identifying the hazard analysis, what it could be. In simple terms, I would say that if your product is in contact with the metal during manufacturing or during production, so metal possesses a hazard to you. So do you have a critical control point, which means do you have anything which could which is able to identify this product, the foreign body, and is it able to eliminate this? So the compliances most prevalent today globally are Global Food Safety Initiative. This is basically, I would say, formed in the year 2000 by international retailers who set the guidelines. Then there are food safety regulations which are defined by local country or local region. So I would say in India, FSSAI, which is Food Safety and Standards Association of India, has been working on last, I would say now more than 15 years on setting up the guidelines, and they've been pretty successful in doing so. We are a developing nation, so I would say we are not at a level where we should be, but yes, we are not very far behind also here. Then it's also about whether you are exporting. In case you are exporting, then you are guided by the rules of the other country. So you are basically need to follow the rules for wherever you are exporting. To whom you are supplying? You could be supplying to global giants or global uh, players like Walmarts or Tesco's of the world. So they have their own retailers code of conduct. So they form their own food safety standard. And as a manufacturer, you need to follow all that so that you could be supplying to them. There are international packing standards, which basically means that you need to follow certain packing laws, basically which are universal. And most important today, what is upcoming is nutritional labeling regulations. So you see that it is declared today that there is a peanut in it, this could be allergic, and this is becoming very mandatory here. So let's start. What is due diligence? Why do you need it? Due diligence. So we must have read a lot of times that there have been certain food recalls because of XYZ reasons. Now, there one is there could be a genuine reason for this recall because there is some. But in case of a food recall, as a manufacturer, you should be able to provide an evidence that whatever you are producing, whatever is getting manufactured, is is of highest safety and all precautions are being taken. But howsoever, there could be some reasons also where there is not where the reasons are not deliberate, and it is just by chance something has happened. And in such cases, it becomes utmost important that you are able to prove that you have taken all the precautions in minimizing the risk, first of all, and also you have taken precautions to avoid the reoccurrence of such a issue. And all these are documented. If we are able to, if as a manufacturer you are able to prove it, which means that you have done a due diligence in setting up your processes across the lines, whether this could be at a raw material stage or this could also be at a final goods stage. So what is due diligence? So let's start with concept and let's go into the functionality part then. So what is the concept of due diligence? Due diligence is actual act of carrying out comprehensive quality checks to verify that a product is safe. So let me ask something. So let's say you surely must be using some of the inspection equipments or measuring equipments, right? And there are certain parameters you set that because of which the rejections should take place. Are you sure that whatever is getting detected and should be rejected is actually getting rejected? So today the auditors, the compliances are more and more asking about these things, that how do you ensure that something that was not supposed to go out in the market is being held back. Something that was to be stopped has been stopped. So why this is necessary? Extremely necessary because we want to ensure that the product is free from any kind of a foreign body contamination when it is reaching the consumer. The product is correctly weighed, which means that as per the raw rule of the land, we are delivering as per what we have promised. To give you an example, so any commodity product, what we go out in the market today to buy, we try to buy that as per piece. But as a manufacturer, it is sold by weight. So you buy a soap, you buy a toothpaste, or you buy a food product. Everything you see, there is a weight declared. So, and as a manufacturer, they have to comply to the weight, what has been set by, I would say, legal metrology. The product is accurately labeled, which means that all the information is there in the product, whether it is the components, whether it is what ingredients it has, whether it is date of batch record, whether it is date of expiry, whether there is date of manufacturing there. And this could be right from ingredient stage to the final product on the supermarket shelf. So when I say ingredient state, because a lot of raw materials which come from different sources, which are not inbuilt, or I would say which are not made in-house, they have to be checked for the foreign body contamination, because that could be one of the source which could lead to a contamination in the final product. So how does it happen? How does the functionality happen? So let's take an example. So what you see here is an X-ray machine. So let's say this is an automatic device whereby the product will get detected for contamination and this product has to be rejected. Without any manual interventions, this has to be used. And this is an automatic device where the rejection has to happen when the detection happens for a contamination. But are you sure that when the detection happened and the rejection really pushed the product in the rejection bin? How about if your rejection bin is full and your rejection did act, but the product did not go into the bin? Now, that is why what we have is electronically controlled rejection bins. So in case, and there are interlocks inside this. So in case the bin is, let's say, two-third or two-third full, it gives an alarm that, it is two-third full. So you need to take out the products out of the bin and this could be emptied. And in case there are more rejections, they would not, they would still go inside the bin and not remain on the conveyor. Now, we also need to ensure that these bins are operated by permissible people. So people having the access codes can only operate it. So these are electronically controlled and cannot be opened by everyone. So these are password protected there. What we need is also from the hygiene side, very easy to clean and maintain machines, because any point where which can point of accumulation becomes a safety hazard. And then there are a lot of things which we need to prove that why such kind of a design is being used. So what is due diligence defense? It's nothing that if there is an incident, you should be able to prove that you have actually all the defense to, or you have taken all the precautions to basically mitigate the risk. And also we have done everything what is required to stop the reoccurrence of this event. So let's say in case in any kind of a X-ray or a metal detection machine, so the conveyor stops. The detection has happened and the conveyor stops. How sure are we that when the conveyor starts to run again, this product would be rejected, or whether the product would not be rejected? So these are basically safety interlocks what has to be provided to meet the safety standards, to have an assurance that whatever gets passed on the machine, whatever gets detected is actually getting rejected here. So let's identify what are the relevant standards and understand what is necessary, what you need to follow for your business. So one of the most important ones is the Global Food Safety Initiative. So it was formed in 2000, as I earlier said, and it is formed by some of the international retailers. And what what they have defined is HACCP as their guideline, so which is basically hazard analysis and critical control point. So most of the industry today, food industry today, follows this principle only. If there is a hazard, we need to have something which is called the critical control point where we can address the issue. So we cannot control the hazard, but we can control, we can catch this hazard and we can remove it from the line. Most of the countries do follow GFSI. Also, under GFSI, now there are certain standards which are being followed. One is British Retail Consortium, which is BRC, which is most prevalent in India, I would say. And there are close to 1,000 or 1,200 units which are BRC approved today. And we work closely with them also in this context of food safety. Then there is Food Safety System Certification, which is FSSC 22000, and Safe Quality Food. So these are basically some of the regulations each one of us, or each as a manufacturer, you need to follow to one is produce safe food. Also, this safe food has to be to meet the legal compliances and the compliances of the local land. Also, in case it is for some of the other countries or you are exporting, it is meeting the rules for that country. And lastly, if it is for some of the global retailer, it is meeting their standards. Most important, the legal requirements and standards in India. FSSAI controls this. And as I said, last 15 years, they are on the job and they have been extremely helpful. They are working with the food manufacturers. They work with the technology partners to identify that how we can improve, the food safety culture in India and how we can make more and more safe food. Uh, when I say as per the compliances, so there is already legal compliances which are in place, which is guided by legal metrology. So there is a legal metrology. I'll straight come to that. So there's a legal metrology law. As per that, all applicable packaged commodities, whether it is food, whatever is to be sold by weight, has to have a maximum permissible level, and it has to have a tolerance levels which are sent, which are decided or which are approved by Ministry of Consumer Affairs under legal metrology, and they have to meet certain statistical average sample weight rules to before the product is basically released in the market. So how do we fulfill the due diligence through product inspection? So X-ray inspection, uh, which is basically more than contamination detection. It could be mass, it could be product integrity at times. Metal detection, we need to see that the product is metal free. Check weighing, the weight is accurate. Vision inspection, the label integrity. A combination system could be anything which checks for 2 or 3 technologies. And on top of that, if everything of this has to be recorded, there has to be a very good data management software, which is products we have. So most of the things would get covered. And since we are running a demonstration of the equipment, you would see some of the things what I have just said. So this is basically reject confirmation unit, airfail unit. These are some of the things which are required for due diligence of any of the equipments what we have.
Okay.
So key takeaways: understand the regulations and standards, adopt a holistic approach, identify your CCPs, and the equipment should have due diligence. And most important, record what you do. If anything is to be, we have useful links to check all this, which we could provide as and when required. And lastly, you could reach me anytime. That's my phone number and email ID. And we would like to invite you to the Dairy Expo, which is on 27th to 29th of October, happening at Auto Cluster Exhibition Center, Pimpri, Pune, where we are showcasing all 3 technologies: X-ray, metal detector, and checkware. With whatever we are talking today about due diligence, you could see it there. Thank you so much. I hand it over to Mr. Khanna back.
Okay. Thank you, Sidharth. Just before we go on, there's a poll next. I wanted to ask you, Sidharth, what about the safety of these X-ray systems? Is there a safety
Yes.
factor, and how is that certifiable in India?
Okay. You see, X-ray as a technology, this is very commonly asked that are these safe? Yes, they are very much safe. Are these safe for food products? Very much safe for food products. And who approves the use of X-ray system in India? So AERB, Atomic Research Energy Board, is the board who approves the X-ray systems in India for the radiation leakages. And every model that is sold today by Mettler-Toledo in India is approved by AERB. And once the AERB approves, as a manufacturer or as a user, there is a license which is required by the food manufacturing companies to use that. Unless and until the model is approved, the license cannot be generated. So this is basically an online thing. But Mettler-Toledo sells only those models which are approved in India. Before even selling, we get the approvals, then only launch the products in India.
Okay, and there is a certifying body in India, correct?
Yes, AERB, which is Atomic Energy Research Board.
Okay, thank you, Sidharth. And I realize this is a fairly technical subject, but I thank you for making it very short and brief with a lot of information.
Thank you so much.
Interesting presentation on the current practice in India and where we need to go. So let's try a poll at this point of our participants and see how they are reacting to what we have done so far. Yeah, the poll at this point is asking, what are the worries that you have or that you have faced with the product recall, if any? And the answers, there's a multiple choice question: legal action, cost to recall the product. Are you worried about the ability to recall the product? Are you worried about future compliance issues? Long-term brand damage, is that an issue for you, including unwelcome media attention? Or are you worried about loss of business from retailers and consumers, or some other thing? Please answer the poll question as best as you can, and we will just instantly present the results. Okay, so the results are mainly that people are worried about the costs of recall. They're worried about, that seems to be the biggest worry, legal action. And they are also worried about the brand damage. And to some extent, 20% are worried about loss of business from retailers and consumers. So thank you, everyone, for answering this poll. Let us go on to the next presentation, which is a live demonstration of the food inspection process by Adam Green, marketing manager at Mettler-Toledo Safeline X-ray in the UK. He's going to present this demonstration live from his facility in the UK. Just to tell you a little bit about him, over the past 8 years, Adam has held various commercial and technical roles at Mettler-Toledo, and these have contributed to the development of an online demonstration platform for technical customer support and working closely with local markets to promote X-ray technology and its benefits to customers, including food processing and food production plants. Over to you, Adam.
So hopefully you can now see my screen. And what we're basically going to do is take you through a demonstration of the 3 core elements that Sidharth mentioned previously with regards to due diligence. So first of all, we're going to touch upon the due diligence element of how we ultimately provide product quality. Following on from that, we're going to look at essentially how we provide safety. How do we minimize risk of the technology that we're implementing, i.e. the X-ray machine? And then finally, we're very much going to focus on the compliance element of due diligence, focusing around how do we document what the machine is ultimately doing. So first of all, we're just going to take you through an understanding of how the X-ray can ultimately provide brand protection, how it can provide due diligence for manufacturers in terms of keeping their products safe.
Excuse me,
and the
Adam.
key way. Yes.
Excuse me, Adam, your timer is appearing on the screen. Can you turn that timer off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. Please continue, and please repeat your last sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to focus on how ultimately, initially, in that first section, X-ray machines can provide brand protection by ensuring product safety. And to do this, we're just going to take you through a demonstration of how an X-ray actually not only inspects a product, which is good, but also then when it finds something that is potentially bad in terms of a product has a foreign body, how does the machine interact with that product? So I'm just going to start the X-ray. And here you can see I have my products. I have my first product, and this is a product with an aluminium foil, which potentially poses challenges to manufacturers when it comes to previous types of inspection system. And what you can see is ultimately when we have a foreign body, when there is a trigger, you can see that we get a illumination on Contan Plus, and ultimately we get the indication as to the strength of the signal. And then from that point onwards, what the X-ray is able to do is successfully, via the different types of reject options that we have available to our standard equipment, remove that product from the line in order to ensure that the product which has been deemed bad, ultimately it's not acceptable to an end consumer, goes in an area where it could be either further investigated or ultimately destroyed, to ensure that level of due diligence that once the technology has been able to identify a foreign body, and it does this through the principle of absolute density, and we can go into the image and actually see and highlight where the foreign body is in our product and how the tools have ultimately identified it. Once it's done that, it then has a reject function to ensure that the product will not reach the end consumer. And that's one of the ways in which the X-ray via its software is able to analyze the image that we get created by the X-ray machine, identify whether there is a foreign body, and then successfully remove it from the line so that we have an enclosed element to that product, and it can therefore go onwards to be destroyed. But not only that, obviously it was mentioned in terms of the due diligence, how do we minimize risk? And risk can come in the form of safety of the operators that are using the equipment. So for example, what happens in terms of providing X-ray safety for our customers? And it was a key question that was mentioned earlier about, are the machines safe? The absolute answer is yes, and Sidharth touched on it previously. X-ray machines have a legal limit that they have to comply to in order to meet certain safety regulations. And driven majoritively by the EU, that is a value of 1 microsievert per hour. And that accounts to the amount of X-ray emissions that can essentially escape from the machine within an hour. To provide you with some context, if you were to go and have a chest X-ray at a hospital, that would be equivalent to the individual receiving a radiation dose of 20 microsieverts, i.e. standing in 1 meter of the machine on the in-feed and the out-feed for 20 hours. So it just gives you hopefully some idea of the safety levels that the machines have to conform to from a manufacturing point of view. But how else do we provide safety on these machines? How do we as a manufacturer provide due diligence? Well, one of the ways that we do that is by implementing certain safety features to ensure that should an operator or a member of staff on site need to interact with the machines, in the event that they need to open any of the tunnels or any of the panels to gain access to the machine, that the power to the generator is instantly stopped so the operator is not exposed to higher levels of radiation. And that's exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm going to try and gain access to the front of the machine. And as soon as I try and lower that down, you can see that we ultimately get an error message on the HMI to demonstrate that the X-ray has now been turned off. And you can also see that from the warning lamp illuminating on the X-ray machine itself. Once I've lowered down that flap, we can also demonstrate another way in which we ultimately provide safety when it comes to the X-ray emissions. You can see that we have curtains in the area where the product has to come through. And this is because stainless steel as a material is really good at ultimately containing radiation. And this is why the machine is manufactured out of it. But of course, we cannot have this at the in-feed and the out-feed area where product needs to pass through. To still offer high levels of protection, but allow for product to transfer through, we ultimately have curtains such as here, made of specific material to attenuate X-ray energy to keep it within those regulated limits at the in-feed and the out-feed section. And these is a material that can obviously be removed from a checking point of view, because you have to monitor the safety of the curtains by checking the quality and whether they are wearing as part of the process. And you can engage with the machine in such a way that the bracket itself is easily removable. We can do our visual inspections to make sure the actual material for the curtain is not degrading in any way. And if it's kept in a safe manner, we can slide it back in and ensure that we have our X-ray protection. But not only that, not only are the curtains fundamental to the safety side, the machine is intelligent enough due to the fact that we have a interlock on the reverse of the curtain, that if I was to try and shut the machine and restart the X-ray, I'm not able to, because again, while I've now closed up the front of the machine, I still haven't put my protection element back in. And the machine is intelligent enough to understand, because of the safety circuit, that the X-ray is not safe for the operator to ultimately use, and therefore we are demonstrating due diligence when it comes to the equipment by implementing a series of safety features to ensure the operators, the people that are going to be working in and around the machine, are as safe as possible, not only by manufacturing the machine out of the relevant material to maintain those radiation emission levels, but in the areas where product needs to pass through, we have further protection principles as well. And when you partner that up with the safety circuit, which involves any interaction killing power to the X-ray generator, we're able to provide due diligence for the equipment. And as part 3 of the demonstration, we also mentioned due diligence around compliance, due diligence around documentation. And this we're able to do via the HMI on the machine, the screen. And the reason we can do this is because compliance to whether it be international auditors, whether it be local auditors, or whether it be larger organizations such as the BRC, the information that is stored on the X-ray is absolutely critical, not only to production in terms of the understanding of the productivity of the unit, but also how you can demonstrate safety, but also compliance to various points. And one of the ways that we're able to do this is you can see that we have the image library for the X-ray. And this is a vital element in how we can demonstrate compliance, and our customers can utilize this functionality to essentially help comply with various different types of audit. Now that we have the image from our foreign body we passed earlier, we can click on it. We can see that this is indeed the one where we inserted our 1mm piece of stainless steel. We have a time and date. So again, we can either remove this image from the machine and store it on a central server, but you can also within that then apply necessary precautionary actions that were taken place afterwards to understand how you could ultimately have further prevented those type of incidents happening again. You can demonstrate to an auditor coming in on the 5th of October, we did see a foreign body. It was successfully rejected by the X-ray. And again, you can do this by some of the software packages that are on offer in particular products, which then allows for that full circle to be closed off by demonstrating the actions taken. Not only that, we also have various different abilities to demonstrate other types of compliance. So you can see here is an option to run a radiation survey. And this is another way that Sidharth mentioned the local governing body. It's one thing to get the license to obviously have the X-ray in the beginning, but there are also follow-on checks that need to be taken to ensure that once in situ, the machine is continuously assessed to be safe. And one of the ways you can do this without the requirement of paper is to run radiation surveys on the machine. And ultimately, what we can do, go into here, we can turn this on and we can start our radiation survey. And this is where the local representative on site who's been trained to perform a radiation survey would then go around the machine to make sure that it is conforming to the local regulations, that the machine is safe. And then once they're happy, they've gone through and they've completed, essentially they can select complete, and then it is documented. Again, you could go in and demonstrate to the local governing body who might come in and do an inspection, the frequency in which you're performing your radiation checks. So again, working within the software to help compliance and ultimately demonstrate the due diligence of the manufacturer to ensure safety with regards to their employees. You also have the ability to do further checks such as quality. This function is called a PVR, performance verification routine, where it could be every hour, it could be at the start of a shift, it could be the end of the shift. The operator is actually able to, or maybe a quality manager, implement a test to ensure the sensitivity of the unit can be demonstrated. And again, the frequency in which that is done can be recorded and therefore shown to any potential auditor as well. And via all of these different features, the machine can ultimately be able to demonstrate how we can comply to certain elements. And when we talk about security on the machine, in terms of how the machine operates, what you can see from the event log is all of the actions that have taken place. And you'll notice the second column in particular is based on the user level who has logged in. And you can see all the actions that I have done this morning have been time and date stamped, exactly what has the action that has been undertaken, and also the outcome, what has happened. But there is a range of pre-built in menus that can be utilized, but there are also flexibility to add new. So you can create a new user and you can give them certain permissions to act on the machine. And in this way, by adding levels of security on the machine, what you're able to do is prevent against potential challenges, such as changes to a product menu or the wiping of data, so that, again, you have that level of security to ensure an incoming auditor that you have the system set up in place to capture safety requirements, i.e. in terms of product safety, so removal of foreign-bodied products with foreign bodies in from the line. You also have the ability to demonstrate actions. You've got an X-ray image that's identified that foreign body. What are the steps that you've done after? We can talk about the safety element with regards to the mechanics itself, such as the interlocks, the curtains, the shielding elements. But you also have security as well to ensure that the key critical data, such as the running reports, all of this can ultimately be limited between the various levels. So for example, what you could see, I'm just going to give you a very brief example. We have in the service level, which the MT engineer would do, you have the ability to go in and change product settings, i.e. you can make a machine more or less sensitive, and that can obviously have an impact on the quality program that you have. If I log off, you will notice that that option now completely disappears. You can see that, again, PVR has no settings at this level. And in order to actually go in and affect these changes, it could be that I need to go in as an engineer in order to then either go into the inspection or to set up a PVR test. So there's lots of different ways in which the X-ray, whether via the software to detect foreign bodies, the hardware to help with the safety, or the compliance elements on the HMI to affect either the outcome of the previous elements or to provide heightened levels of security to be able to demonstrate the due diligence of manufacturers who employ X-ray technology within their factory. At this point, I'd very much like to thank you for joining this as part of this quick demonstration into some of the features on the X-ray that ultimately enable us to comply, but also help our manufacturers in their due diligence when it comes to protecting the production of their food.
Thank you, Adam. That's quite interesting and quite answers quite a lot of the questions which are coming up. But I'll just ask you one or two more which have come up from our participants. One question is, you may have gone over it already, but how do you calibrate the machine? Do you need to calibrate it for different products? Did you show that to us, or did you just?
No, and it's a very good question. So, and I'll just change the screen again. So what you'll see, I've got my HMI. And you generally do this at the beginning of a day. It's not something, when it comes to X-ray technology, it's not something that needs to necessarily be calibrated on an hourly basis as previous inspection technologies would need to. But to actually calibrate, you can see I've got my start button on the HMI and I can press calibrate. So I'll do that again. So we press start and you'll see you have the option to calibrate. And it's as simple as selecting those few buttons on the machine, and ultimately the X-ray will then kick into life, calibrate, and then it can go into production in that way. And you can run this at the, like I said, generally at the beginning of a shift. you could do a calibration just to ensure that you are not getting any triggers from the X-ray in comparison to the belt or any of the other changes that you might have done on the machine previously. But again, it's not, sorry.
No, I was going to ask, is the calibration product specific? That means one kind of setting for cheese, another kind of setting for meat products or fish?
Absolutely. So as you can see, we have in the product library, we have a range of menus that have been pre-set up. And each time you create a new product, you go through the calibration process of learning the product into the X-ray, which therefore goes into setting the base level for the algorithms for foreign body detection. And then once you've ultimately got your product menu, which you can select, so it could be, I'm going to select this menu, you would then have the ability, once it's loaded, to start at the beginning of the day. And you can see straight away, because I haven't used that menu in a while, it asks me to calibrate, and I can go through that process, and ultimately it will do it in sort of less than 30 seconds. And then once it's ultimately calibrated, we would then go live into production on that menu. Because once the menu's been set up, you do not need to make necessary changes other than going through that initial setup calibration process at the beginning of the use of that particular product menu.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of more questions, but I think we'll take them at the end. All right. Let's do another poll, Rohit, if we can, while I introduce Nidhi Agarwal. Can we do that? Yeah, here's another poll. How do you currently prove due diligence? That means, what is your current practice? The answers are, we don't do it. Handwritten records, 1 to 99%. The other is totally 100% handwritten. Another answer is we record some quality control activities. Another answer is record all quality control activities, or other. If you can answer this poll quickly, then I will, while you're doing that, I will please click on one of the answers, and I will go on to introduce our third presentation, which is by Ms. Nidhi Agarwal. Nidhi is Regulatory Senior Manager at Reliance Consumer Products Limited. She has long experience in the industry among the brand owners, and she's now Regulatory Senior Manager at Reliance Consumer Products, who will enlighten us on the regulatory and legal compliances in the Indian food industry. Nidhi is a food technologist with 11 years of experience in the food industry, as I said. Her experience includes compliance checks, risk assessment, advocacy, regulatory strategy, and product registration. She has a background in she has a background in managing regulatory compliance for both Indian and international markets, including Southeast Asia, South Africa, the Middle East, and Australia. So over to you, Nidhi.
Thank you, Mr. Naresh. Yeah, I guess.
Just give me a second, Nidhi, before you start. I'll share the poll results, which are that it seems like a majority, 55% of the people are recording their quality control activities. They say they're recording all their activities. There's a very small minority saying that we don't. That's only 9%. And another 9% saying handwritten records, 1 to 99%. So it seems that the majority of our participants are recording all quality control activities, which means we seem to have on board today's webinar quite a bit of the senior people involved with food product and other product inspection and reporting and auditing activities, compliance activities. Thank you for that. And back to you, Nidhi. Sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. So thank you, Mr. Naresh, for great introduction. And thank you, Sidharth and Adam, who has already set the context for the current practices that we have for the inspection. And like whatever the new technologies that we have for the food safety. What I will be talking about is all about the regulatory framework that is being specified for the food safety. Whenever we talk about the food safety or maybe something related to food, this one thing came in mind is like food is like good health, because there is a link between a food and a good health. So good health is not something that we can buy, or however, it can be an extremely valuable saving account. So it's not something that we can earn from our wealth. It is something that we can get it from the food, and from the food, how we can get, either we are consuming a good a food which is having a good nutrients, whatever we are consuming, or maybe some external factors like physical activity and all. But what we are focused today during this webinar is the food safety, and this is the very important and the crucial for our good health is the food safety. So talking about the Indian regulatory framework that we have is like Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, Bureau of Indian Standards, Legal Metrology, and the last one is the EGMA. These are like four Indian regulatory authorities that have set certain requirements to ensure food safety. Then before talking and elaborating more about the safety requirements that these Indian authority have set, I would like to explain and elaborate why these regulations are important. Because whatever the technologies that we have, even the businesses can set certain standards, but still why the regulation, they are setting certain requirements. It is something like, in order to ensure the food safety across worldwide or across a nation, whatever we are following is something that ensure the protection and the safety for the consumers. So in that terms, we are like, in a way, regulatory framework is ensuring the integrity of the product. So integrity of the product, that is not coming just from at the stage of manufacturing, or maybe at the stage of ingredient level, or maybe at the stage of additive level, or at the stage of the finished food product. It is something that we need to ensure at every stage of the food chain. When we are developing the product, so food should be safe in terms of ingredients, additives, and the processing aids. So safety is not something that we need to ensure at the production level only. We have to even ensure whether the ingredients and additives, or whatever the ingredient we are using for the product to be manufactured, that is safe in consumption, and whatever the levels we are using is safe for the consumption. Apart from that, the processing methods and whatever the packaging material we are using, that should be in such a way that ensure the safety. Whatever the product consumer is going to consume is safer for the consumption. And how we are manufacturing the product, at that time, hygiene and the storage requirement should be met, so that the product delivered to the consumer is safer in condition. And the lastly is the labeling requirements. So in a way, like, consumer can read and understand and make an informed choice by reading the label, and make a make an informed choice and select a food product whatever they want to consume. How this regulation and the inspection, this regulation is fundamental sector for the food sector. Food safety, it is because like food safety is crucial to protect consumers from health risk related to the contaminations and the food allergen. Actually, this regulation in place that brings confidence among consumers, that fills the gap of trust between producers and consumers, and this ensures the credibility and authenticity of the food being manufactured. So in a way, that helps in ensuring the product integrity, as I said in my earlier slide, within the nation also, and whenever we are importing product to the other countries, that helps in ensuring the integrity at that level also. Talking about the chronology, so in that terms, since 2006 it is FSSAI, but before 2006, since 1954 it was PFA, then Prevention of Food Adulteration. It was repealed by FSSAI in 2006, and in 2006 they have issued Food Safety and Standards Act, that is basically a base on which further the rules and regulations has been notified. In 2011, the FSSAI notified rules and regulation. In 2018, like going forward, after 2011 onwards, they have issued certain amendments, and one of the big amendment that they issued, that happened for the food safety and standards regulation, packaging and labeling regulation has been divided into further 3 requirements for the 3 regulations. This is again basis the complexities and the new technologies and the new innovations that we are having these days in industries. So on that basis, there are like 3 regulations now that set the practices for packaging requirements, for labeling requirements, and the advertisements and claim requirements. And going forward now, the latest current focus of FSSAI or maybe the other authority is more upon food safety and the sustainability. Along with FSSAI, as I said my earlier slides, like we have Bureau of Indian Standards also. They even have some Indian standards. So in that, along with FSSAI for certain packaging standards, certain requirements are being set by Indian standards for the packaging material and for the food additives. Now, as I said, like Food Safety and Standards Act is a base, is an act to consolidate the laws related to food and to establish the Food Safety Authority of India for laying down the science-based standards for articles of food. So that's something, that's a base on which further the rules has been notified and further the regulations have been notified. Now, talking about the inspection, I have like, if we say like physical and the visual inspection, then there are in that particular context, the certain requirements are being set by Food Safety Authority in the regulation, licensing and registration. There are certain other requirements being set by labeling, display and the legal metrology. Related to the chemical inspection, certain requirements are being set in the other set of regulations. It is food product standards and food additives, contaminants and toxins, and some food manuals are also issued by FSSAI that elaborates the method of analysis and the packaging regulation. And some biological inspections, those standards are being set by the food product standards and food additive regulation, in which they have set the microbiological standards for some of the food products. So as I said, for the physical or the visual inspection, food safety and standards licensing and registration regulation is applicable. In that, they have given the guidelines for procuring licenses, but along with that, they have given the requirements of sanitary and hygiene practices. So until unless you are not following the sanitary and hygiene practices within the manufacturing side, so in a way you are not ensuring the safety of the product while production, you won't be able to get the license. So in that terms, like when you are manufacturing the product at that time also the safety is required. And who usually conduct that safety audits? Those audits are being conducted by the FSSAI recognized auditing agencies. Apart from that, in the same regulation, there is another requirement being given, again to ensure the safety, is about the testing of chemical and the microbiological contaminants, that to be done through NABL accredited labs, and those test reports to be submitted once in 6 months. This is to ensure like the safety, whatever the food is being manufactured is safer for the consumers. The another set of regulation is the food safety and standards labeling and display regulation. In that, they have given the guidelines for the labeling declarations. So this particular regulation is to regulate the labeling declarations made by food business operators, and whatever the information that a food business operator they are putting on the label, that is accurate. So they ensure about that, and whatever it is being shared with the consumer, it should be correct, so that consumer can make their right choices and make their informed choices. So ingredient listing, nutrition information, allergen declaration. So all this information should be correctly put on the artwork or the label so that consumer can read and understand. The third set of regulation is the different authority. It's a legal metrology. They are basically to protect the consumer, because like nowadays, let's for example, there is a package of 50 gram, the net weight is written as a 50 gram, but who ensures that actually the product inside is 50 gram or 48 gram? So in that context, the consumer should not be deceived, so that there is authorities, the legal metrology, who aim to protect the consumer from such fraudulent practices. so that the industry should not practice and should not do such kind of things that they are offering a short measuring amount or short measuring product to the consumers. Apart from that, legal metrology has even set the requirements and set the guidelines for the enforcement of the weights and measures. The second set is the chemical inspection. For the chemical inspection, I will briefly elaborate about the food safety standards, food product standards, and food additive regulation. In this regulation covers like more than 400 standards, 400 food product standards. Like they have a set of standards for the milk and milk product, like milk, we have standard for milk, milk powder, curd, yogurt. We have standard for ice cream. Likewise, we have a multiple standards, and maybe the number is more than 400. And all those products are not just being defined, they are, along with the definition, certain chemical parameters are being given for classifying those products. So those chemical parameters, again, for the safety of the product. So for instance, for the category of the product, sugar candy, if you're calling certain sugar candy as a toffee, the product must meet the criteria of ash sulfated, that should be not more than 2.5%, and ash insoluble is not more than 0.2%. So these are some chemical parameters are being defined whenever you are calling certain product as a toffee, or maybe other hard candy, or maybe ice cream or a frozen dessert. So you have to first meet these chemical parameters. So whatever the product we are calling and whatever we are offering to the consumer, it should be safe. The second is like food safety and the standards, contaminant, toxins, and residues. In this regulation, they have given a list of contaminants like metal contaminants, naturally occurring toxic substances, PCBs, PAH in for the fishery products, and the pesticide list. And since we know that these metal contaminant pesticides that are like at certain level, above certain level, it is not safer for the consumption. So that's why FSSAI has given certain maximum permissible limits, and that are being defined for the product category. So in a way, this is also one of the steps that FSSAI has taken towards the consumer safety. And these are the limits being specified by FSSAI. Another set of regulation is the food safety and standards packaging regulation. In this, specifically, they are the guidelines are to regulate the packaging material. As I said, like certain Indian standards, BIS has specified some Indian standard. So those Indian standards are being followed for all the packaging materials that we are using currently in the food sector. So those Indian standards are being followed. And again, similarly, as I said, elaborated for the food product, some chemical parameters are being defined, and all those things are being defined for the packaging material also in the Indian standards. And so FSSAI has set the requirements, and along with that, they have integrated those requirements with the BIS. And apart from that, they have given an additional requirement for the migration limits of the substances. So because since packaging material is made up of, again, some certain chemicals, so the migration should not be in such a way from the packaging material that will make the food unsafe for the consumers. So in the terms of safety, they have set the requirements for the migration limits. And lastly is the food manual. Food manual, they have said they have given all the methods of analysis that are being provided for various food products. Biological inspection in the regulation, food product standards, and the food additive. There are few of these are the food products for which the microbiological limits are being defined by FSSAI. So those are the limits being followed by laboratories or maybe the food business operators. Over and above, if they want to develop some stringent standards, so business can develop that stringent standards. But these are the minimum levels that FSSAI has specified. So this is about the safety requirements that FSSAI or maybe the other Indian regulatory bodies has specified and mentioned. Apart from that, as I said, the other 2S is like sustainability. So in alignment with the plastic waste management rules, and now FSSAI has permitted the use of recycled plastic as a food contact material. Nowadays, as you say, a lot of accumulation of plastic material. So certain actions and certain guidelines has come to ban the single-use plastic. But along with that, they have even in FSSAI, it was not allowed to use the recycled plastic earlier, but now they have allowed to use the recycled plastic, considering the safety of the consumer. Bureau of Indian Standard, as I said in my earlier slides, like few of the very common Indian standards that we use in the food industries are they, like IS 10146, 2771. These are few of the Indian standard we are using for the packaging material. And apart from that, in food safety and standards regulation, there is one more regulation on prohibition and restriction of sales. So until unless like for packaging, drinking water, mineral water, food for infant nutrition, and some milk powder, we in food industry cannot sell the product until unless they are not having IS certification. So IS certification is being given by the Bureau of Indian Standard. So this is certain. This is a kind of a mandatory requirement set by FSSAI. So we, in a way, both FSSAI and Bureau of Indian Standards are linked, and we have to have the this particular certification mark before selling this product to the consumer. The another mandatory standard is the egg mark standard. It is mandatory for ghee, fat spread, and the multi-source edible oils. So along with your FSSAI logo, it is mandatory to have this egg mark logo also. And all these actions and then guidelines requirements are being set, keeping in mind the consumer safety. So this is all about my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Nidhi. First of all, one of the questions that has been asked, I think, Nidhi, you have addressed. One of the questions of the participants, we still have we've only lost 7 or 8 participants throughout the webinar, although we are more than running about 10 minutes behind. One of the questions is about new product registration. I think you have answered that to some extent, Nidhi. You have said there are quite a few compliances that need to be met before the product can be registered. I just take a couple of more minutes before we wind up the show. There are 2 other questions that are asking about the detection limit of the inspection system that was shown earlier. They ask about whether substances used to clean the system or rid it of infestation, or maybe in the food industry, if you use chemicals for fumigation or other things, infestation, can they be inspected? So that can be possibly quickly answered by Sidharth. And the other question I would like you to answer, Sidharth or Adam, which I think is an important question, is that the whole idea of this inspection system is that it is automated and it should work without any human intervention when it is working, because it needs to operate at high speeds for productivity. But how do you guarantee that no defective product has gone through the tunnel? Suppose the electricity goes off while the inspection machine is running and the conveyor stops. What about the product which is at the neither here nor there? Maybe it's just gone through the conveyor but was rejected. How can you make sure, how can you have due diligence or compliance that the system is totally fail-safe, that no bad product reaches the consumer? Can you just quickly answer that?
Okay, Sidharth this side. See, first of all, we have reject confirmation units, so which ensure that anything that has to be rejected is rejected. And in case it fails to reject, it sets up an alarm and it would stop the machine. So we know, and it would give a fault on the machine itself that this was the issue. Coming back to your question is that if something was detected and the conveyor stops, so there is again an interlock which will ensure that on starting of the conveyor, the products get rejected, right? There's a software option which gets activated. The products, certain products get rejected, and then only the products are sent through for the check, and then they are released in the market. So there are interlocks available within the machine itself.
Okay. What I was asking is that means your system is very sure that no defective product has gone through. Although it was
There are checks. There are checks. There are checks which are installed on the machine, on the conveyors, to ensure, number one, whatever is detected for rejection gets rejected, and also there is a counter check that the good products which should pass are actually passing through the conveyor on a after the rejection system.
Okay. So we still seem to have our participants on board, but at the same time, we are running about 10 minutes over or 15 minutes over. So I think we should wind up the webinar. I thank you, Sidharth. I thank Adam and Nidhi, Nidhi, I think you gave a whole course in the internal regulations, which is probably very useful for the food producers. And it's quite it requires probably a whole webinar and a whole refresher for what are the FSSAI regulations and what are the desirable practices in food production, safety, and compliance. So I think it's been a very interesting webinar. I think I started out by saying that this is an industry which is growing fast. It's an industry which has 40,000 registered food companies already. There are many more which are not registered. At the same time, the companies that are registered, the large companies, are increasing the capacity by leaps and bounds. They're investing in new plants, new projects. So there's a huge expansion in the industry. And it means that the industry is not only going to grow in size, but it's going to become more and more competitive. And as Nidhi pointed out, without following these compliances, you will not be able to export. And the export opportunity for food products from India is huge. We are already large exporters of many, many food products, even processed food products. And increasingly, the opportunity is there in fish and meat, etc. So the opportunity is huge. The food processing technology is coming into line. The plants are becoming more structured. And the government is also gearing up for compliances and regulations because it sees the huge opportunity in exports. It sees the huge opportunity in employment. So we are onto a good thing. The food industry is onto a good thing. So why mess it up? Why not be like some other industries like software? Why not show our compliance to the government, show what we are doing, show how we are meeting global standards, and actually, first of all, please our own end consumers, please our growing population by providing the right protein at the right place, at the right time, and at the right price. So these technologies will help us do that. They will help us not stumble. They will help us prevent product recalls. They will prevent damage to brands. These will permit us to grow in a logical and in a scientific manner, in a rational manner, which should grow the entire supply chain, the food supply chain, where we are getting more and more protein to more and more people. And I think that's the way we should look at this technology, that these are investments which are necessary. They're structurally necessary. It's a question of your deciding which technology is appropriate, which manufacturer is appropriate. Naturally, you can go and see MettlerToledo's equipment at the Dairy Expo in Pune. I think it's the end of the month. So they are very present in the country, very widely respected. They are used by most of the major manufacturers. So I think it's time to get on board to understand the technology, to understand the regulations, as Nidhi has pointed out, to understand how the machines work, as Adam has shown. And I think this is an opportunity for us to move closer to building structured production lines, which have inline inspection in place as far as possible, and inline systems and software also, which is maybe another step forward for analytics of the rejections, why are the rejections, audits, and the paperwork, so that in case of any mishap, we can come clean and show that this is, why has this happened, both internally as well as for any other reason. So I think this has been a useful webinar. I realize it's a difficult subject. It's not the most popular subject in the world, as we have found out, but it's a necessary subject for a very healthy industry. I mean, this is an industry, after all, that is prospering because of the great gift we have, which is sunlight. I mean, the best conversion of sunlight is food, is growing things. And the best thing to do with that food is to deliver it to as many people as possible in the right quality and quantity. So I think this is the importance of this contribution by companies like MettlerToledo and other companies who are in the food processing, manufacturing, inspection, and auditing business. And they can help the government also in terms of helping the compliances, and ultimately that helps the end consumer and grows the industry at the right rate and at the right price. So I thank you. Thank you again, Sidharth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Nidhi. And thank you, participants. There are 2-3 more questions, but they are fairly technical, and I think they will be answered offline by the experts. So thank you again. I just like
Thank
to
you so much.
Thank you very much.
That we, Ippstar, Packaging South Asia, and Threefold, will put on this webinar. We have another event on 18th January, which is a live event in Mumbai. That is a movement, that's a conference on smart, active, and sustainable packaging. And of course, our participants and anybody else who's interested can support that event also. That is going to be probably the next event for our organization. 18th January in Mumbai, full day. Thank you again.
Thank you.